Good afternoon, and thanks for tuning in to SBAM's Small Business Briefing. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Communications at SBAM, and our President and CEO, Brian Calley, is enjoying a much-deserved week away, and so we are welcoming back our familiar co-host, Kelli Saunders. Kelli, thanks for joining me today.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Kelli Saunders, Vice President of Policy and Engagement at SBAM. Always happy to be with you. And we will do our best to do justice by Brian while he's away. We definitely have a full show of content to share today.
Yes, and it's actually a good thing you're on the show today, Kelli, because one of the things we're going to talk about first here is what's going to happen with the legislature when they return from the Thanksgiving break. So you and the advocacy team have been working really hard on a top 10 list. And so let's walk through that today. This will be available on our website for reference either later today or tomorrow, so check back there. But let me pull this up so I have a little cheat sheet here because I'm not as well versed as you, Kelli. And let's start with, I think, one of the top issues that we can all agree on here is the consequences of the Supreme Court's adopt and amend decision.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. And we really wanted to take a step back after the election, now that the legislature will be back in full force after the Thanksgiving holiday, as they continue to essentially put their list of priorities together. And again, those can conflict a little bit between the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. But these are things that we have seen move or gain traction or on our radar that we want to make sure that you as small business owners know about. So I really am going to apologize. This is not necessarily a fun top 10 list, but it is a top 10 list of those bills that we are following. And so, to your point, Sarah, the number one issue that you have heard from us time and time again is the implementation issues of the Earned Sick Time Act and the phase out of the tip credit. And so, Sarah, if you don't mind, I am going to ask again that you share a resource page on our website in addition to our calls to action. But it is really important that the legislature moves on those top five issues of fixing the Earned Sick Time Act implementation wise. We are not combating 72 hours of paid sick time given to employees, but just some guardrails around that for implementation purposes. Fixing the 3-day no call, no show, for example, removing the rebuttable presumption that puts employers in grave danger of being sued at any cost. Things like definition of what a true employee is and parsing out the part-time versus independent contractors, the ability to front end load time. If you want, when you give this benefit to someone, instead of doing all the accruals throughout the year, exempting small businesses so they come in line with FMLA with 50 or under. And then obviously, if you offer a more generous leave time than what this act requires, let's exempt those small businesses because they are doing right by their employees already. This kind of act does take away flexibility from employees, and we've heard that time and time again. So let's make sure that as this act goes into its implementation phase, February 21st, 2025, that we're setting everyone up for success. If all of this sounds scary, and for the first time you're hearing it, we really do want to be a resource to you here at SBAM. So those links that were just dropped in the chat, please make sure that you are visiting that piece of our website. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to Jacob and I here at SBAM. And then obviously the phase out of the tip credit has caused a lot of heartburn in the hospitality industry. We know that servers make well above minimum wage, and so the phase out of the tip credit eventually reaching $15 an hour in 2029 is not preferred by employees or employers. And it really will change the service industry if there's not some sort of change made to this specific piece of the law. So we are advocating every day in Lansing to make sure that some of these things are rectified. We encourage you to fill out those calls to action. They really are making a difference when we're meeting with legislators and with leadership. This has by far been one of our most successful calls to action in SBM history. You all have done an outstanding job sharing how this is going to impact your business, but we could use some more in order to push this over the finish line. And so please do share your stories with your legislators and with us so that we can do the same. So that is number one on our list and will not move for the remainder of this lame duck session.
All right, let's move through our list. Number two here is the potential for unemployment benefit expansions.
We've talked about this in depth too. Obviously, actually before they, during a time in September when they returned during the election, there was a bill that was moved out of the House chamber to expand unemployment weeks from 20 to 26 weeks. And that was sent over to the Senate. We obviously are in opposition of any changes to the unemployment insurance system until the trust fund is restored to the balance that it was pre-COVID when it was essentially used as a social safety net. And then also, the Unemployment Insurance Agency, under the direction of Director Dale, has really tried to put together a better system that roots out fraud for both the employer and the claimant perspective, and also has some guardrails within its respective department in order to run a very functional and transparent system. And so, what we've said all along is let the director do her work in order to make sure that this agency is being a good steward of funds for employers and taking care of claimants who truly need it when they are not working. And so, now that that bill from the House has been sent over to the Senate, there is debate in the Senate about raising the amount per week. Right now, Michigan is at about 382. They're talking about going to 602, which is essentially tripling. And we know that all of you out there who have employees, you look at this and say, how in the world? And we are saying the same thing here, in Lansing. And so we do know that there is some talk within the Senate, the House, and the governor's office about making a change to that benefit level and week. And so as you move about December, you should expect to see some calls to action surrounding unemployment insurance reform. And we are going to need you again to speak into the system and share issues that you've had these various years with certain cases not being resolved. And really, it's not that we don't believe that the unemployment system can be functional. It's just that it's in process of being fixed. And you can't have a process in midway completion, especially an overhaul of a system, and also have laws put into place to expand weeks and benefit amount, you're ripe for fraud all over again. So, what we're saying is let's fix the system and then we can talk about these other things. The problem is, I don't know that we're going to have the opportunity to do that unless we have our small business owners speak into the system. So, this is number two on our list.
All right, moving on to number three, and that is the potential for an overhaul of workers' compensation.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is on everyone's list. We had been hearing rumblings about it for the last couple months, but nothing had really come to fruition in the form of bills, but they were introduced or appeared, I should say, in the Senate, Senate Bills 1079 and 1080. And this essentially guts the current workers' compensation system and takes us back almost to when it was instituted in the 1900s. And so, while the workers' compensation system was fixed about 10 to 12 years ago, and it was a leap to best practice, it actually took Michigan from one of the lowest performing and efficient states in the country to being a top 10 best state for workers' compensation. But this would essentially abandon the system at the expense of employers, unfortunately. These bills effectively do gut Michigan workers' compensation system and would lead to drastically increased premiums on employers. So these bills substantially alter and expand the definition of what a disability is. It eliminates many current work search requirements and would even apply changes retroactively back to 1985. So we would be paying claims that were made all the way back to 1985. I've never seen anything like this, to be honest. So in a time when we're facing headwinds in the small business, world, the fact that this would be something that would be even entertained, not only does it, set the small business community back in what they would have to pay in premiums, but this makes us drastically uncompetitive in the nation. And so we are very worried about this one. Again, it's originating in the Senate, and we will be watching as we head into December.
All right, Kelly, what is the latest with the local preemption repeal?
Yes, we have talked about this in depth too. This essentially, so all the laws regarding labor laws and uh, regulations are set at the state level. And what this bill would seek to do is essentially create a patchwork scheme where different communities could set their own minimum wage and labor laws. And so if you're a small business and you own a business in Oakland County, but then you expand into Macomb County, this bill would open it up where you could have different compliance in both counties, should they choose to pass it. It really does make compliance very, very difficult. It also makes it very easy for people to get in trouble. And so, what we're saying is leave those rules at the state level, make it even across the board. So, as business expands, whether you're small, medium, or large, that you have a level playing field. If we go into having all these different localities set these different, marks essentially for business, you're really not creating, not only you're not creating a place for people to grow, you are essentially prohibiting growth because people are going to find it basically impossible to reach all the requirements with all the different potential labor laws that could be set in these different localities. So we are continuing to watch this one as well. It's called the local preemption repeal, also in Lansing called the Death Star. So if you hear these two terms, that's what that means, is they want to give the potential for 1,800 of our local governments to be able to set those local labor laws.
All right, Death Star. That doesn't sound dire at all.
I
Um,
know it gets dramatic up in here sometimes, but just sharing the insider baseball of Lansing.
amazing. All right, number 5 on the list is the Consumer Protection Act expansion.
Yes, so the Michigan Consumer Protection Act is also a Senate bill, something that we've been watching that we do feel might move off the Senate floor and head over to the House. So this does apply to transactions or conduct that are already regulated by a regulatory board or license. This exemption does protect a wide variety of businesses from class action lawsuits and other lawsuits for that matter. So these highly regulated industries already include safeguards or protect consumers against deceptive conduct and remedies for consumers. And so our current law does protect businesses in dozens of industries, which is a list spanning from hospitals and veterinarians to barbershops and mechanics. So just think about any industry that is regulated by a board or a licensing board. They are already falling over rules that keep them accountable. This bill essentially says that even though you are regulated by this licensing board, you will now be thrown into the pool with everybody else. It's like 80 industries across Michigan. And so you basically could get hit double by not only the state, but also this licensing board that you're already regulated by. And so, because we're just saying, because these remedies already exist for consumers who feel they have been wrongly regulated by a business, that this bill doesn't really do anything further to protect consumers, and it does create a substantial burden on businesses that are already, under extreme scrutiny. So we are watching this one as it is in the Senate as well.
All right, here's a new one to our watch list, Kelly, and this is the plumber and electrician apprentice to journeyman ratio. Tell us more.
Yes, so we are worried about this one because right now, the current ratio for apprentice to journeyman master electricians on a job site is 3 to 1. This bill moves it 1 to 1. So if you're thinking about all the things that need to be done in Michigan when it comes to these specific industries, moving that ratio from 3 to 1 to 1 to 1 Imagine how much tighter our pipeline gets because we know skilled trades has been a focus of us here in Michigan to get people into skilled trades, but we are still catching up. And we're low on people too. Remember, we have a population growth issue. So essentially, all these jobs that focus on skilled trades with plumbers and electricians, if you reduce the ratio from 3 to 1 to 1 to 1, you getting your pipes fixed in your house, Sarah, becomes extremely difficult because of these mandates and the benchmarks that have to be reached. So, what we're saying is stop trying to regulate the industry itself with doing the apprentice to journeyman ratios and let the system do what it does, which is if people want to go into the skilled trades and do it one way or the other way, it doesn't matter. We cannot be restricting these specific skilled trade areas by putting ratios specifically from a 3 to 1 to a 1 to 1.
Okay, next on our list here is price control, specifically during declared emergencies.
Yes, this one is concerning and it sits in the Senate as well. Senate bills 954, 955, and 956. And there is a new price control requirement on businesses during declared emergencies. So these bills would apply to hotel and lodging, retailers, energy providers, and a 10% increase in prices during a declared emergency would constitute a violation. So we share the sentiment that bad actors should not excessively increase prices, obviously, during times that we're struggling. But the 10% increase threshold defined in this act is overly broad and would inhibit the ability of small businesses to respond to regular supply and demand fluctuations during emergencies. Just think about everything we went through during COVID. Michigan already does have a price gouging law in the books to target prices found to be grossly in excess of comparable properties or goods. And so these excessive new price controls would lead to product shortages, reduced quality of goods, and would disincentivize businesses from increasing needed supply during emergencies. So we just find this to be a gross overreach. 10% is such a low threshold.
All right, Kelly, let us know what's happening with the mandatory automatic IRA House bill.
Yes, we've talked about this in the past. This is House Bill 5461, and it would implement a new mandate for employers in Michigan who do not currently offer retirement benefits for their employees to enroll essentially in retirement benefits that would be administered by the state. And the reason that we don't support this, we obviously think retirement benefits are very important for employees. We offer it at SBAM as an option to secure that product and service directly through us. But that's exactly the point, is that the private market already provides for this. So why should the government? And the only reason that we're nervous that this is going to pass is because it was allotted in the fiscal year 25 budget under Governor Whitmer's budget, and it was passed. And so we thought this might be coming actually immediately after the election, or actually right before the election, and it was held up on the House floor. So we're flagging it as a possibility, but hoping that it doesn't cross the finish line because, again, the private market already solves for this problem. So there's no need for government to insert itself in this space.
All right, and let's talk next about the mandatory paid leave benefit. There's both Senate and House bills on this one, which is different from the ESTA adopt and amend issue.
Yeah, we're continuing to watch this mandatory paid leave benefit. Well, ESTA has definitely sucked the air out of the room because there's such, gross implementation issues that we have to address. We really can't take our eye off the ball here. As a reminder, this is a 15-week of intermittent paid leave benefit that everyone would have to offer across the board. It was modeled after Minnesota, and Minnesota's seen a lot of problems with implementing it. It takes on the system much like the Unemployment Insurance Agency, where employers would pay into the system and then the government releases those benefits directly to essentially the employee when they're taking it. So you're going to the government to ask for time off rather than working that out with your employer. Like it makes zero sense. And unfortunately, we haven't seen a system that works here in Michigan very well. Again, we feel like the UIA is really working on implementing a system that it works towards being fraud free. But until Michigan can kind of figure out what that system would look like, why would we would even entertain something like this? Is really not fiscally responsible in any certain way. And so, while we understand the need for employers to take care of their employees, this is not the way to do it. And using Minnesota as an example is not a good one. They've tried to implement it and now they're clawing it back because it has been a behemoth to implement, like $1 billion in order to set it up with a whole new agency with people that you'd have to hire in order to administer it. And it's not been successful. So we really shouldn't be following policies that have not been proven to be successful. And we will continue to watch this as we move forward as well.
All right, let's round out our top 10 watch list here with some proposed data privacy mandates.
Yes, so data privacy has been on the list for Governor Whitmer and some members in the Senate. I believe Governor Whitmer actually might have mentioned it in her State of the State this past year. It hasn't seen a ton of traction because the bill is written, which is Senate Bill 659, had a lot of issues from all stakeholders. And so Senator Bayer, who is the author of that bill, had put together a work group to hear some of those issues, which we're very grateful that we were a part of that process. But given the importance of e-commerce and throwing a wrench in that system in order to, address maybe some very specific grievances when it comes to data privacy, really did muck up this bill a little bit. And so while we've seen some great improvements to the bill, it's not quite where it needs to be. And we know it'll put a lot of strain on our folks that use e-commerce as a main focus of their business, specifically in the retail section. And so we do encourage you to check out that bill. We will be watching it as well. We're not necessarily certain if that will move during this lame duck session, but we have seen some posturing that maybe the Senate wants to. And so we're just putting it on your radar to watch, and we will continue to keep you updated. So that's our top 10 list. I know it's not super great news, but if we do not update you on these things, then we would not be doing our job. Again, you'll find this on our website yet this week for reference, and we will be updating it in real time in December as things begin to move in committee. But we're going to do everything we can on a lot of this stuff to hope that it stays in committee and doesn't move much.
All right, so Kelly, one other item that came to the surface last week was a proposal from the speaker-elect on road funding. Can you share a little bit about that announcement and how that could factor in the coming weeks?
Yes, this was a really interesting introduction by the soon to be Speaker of the House, Matt Hall. There's been agreement over many decades that road funding is an issue, and Governor Whitmer has made it kind of a keystone of her time in office. And so, as people were starting to ask questions about what rises to the surface as this Democrat trifecta comes to the end of the road here in 2024, Matt Hall kind of put a spin on it. And it's really introduced a new narrative to these discussions as we head into December. So, as you said, Sarah, Matt Hall is the speaker elect in 2025. And on Friday, he announced a plan to dedicate 2.7 billion within current state revenues to infrastructure improvements. And everybody was like, "What? How's this going to happen?" And so um it's interesting the approach that he's taken, but Democrats seem open to having the discussion. And in a time the last 2 years where a lot of things were passed on party lines, that openness has sparked kind of some interest on how this might move for the rest of this lame duck session. And so the big key issue that people are asking is It might direct money away from some K-12 funding, and what fills that hole with the K-12 funding. So, according to Speaker-elect's plan, 1.2 billion in corporate income tax revenue would be immediately set aside for the infrastructure improvements, and then beginning in 2026, another 600 million in corporate income tax revenue, which is mostly dedicated to economic development efforts, currently would be assigned to infrastructure instead. So the speaker-elect wants a policy change shift to revenue for the 6% sales tax on gasoline to go to infrastructure, and that would move about 945 million over to infrastructure. So a statement from his office said that K-12 schools would be held harmless in the gas tax shift, but there's not any details on how that's occurring. So there's obviously, like, this was just announced on Friday. There's going to be a lot of details that start to come out about it. And so, um, really the question is why this has come to the surface is that Michigan's roads and bridges have really, you all drive on these roads. For all the construction that we see, and the nice road that's paved. You go to the next one and there's potholes galore. And we all know we're entering into a season where it only gets worse because of our water table and the snow and the ice that we experience. Don't shoot the messenger for obviously the weather that we're going to start to experience. We've had beautiful weather from spring to fall, but this really has been met with some openness, and this is good. Reminder that the governor, when she could not get the gas tax hike that she had proposed in 2019, decided to borrow money to fix roads, and so there's a 3.5 billion highway project over a 4-year period that the Michigan Department of Transportation is spending 700 million of that this year, and then people are looking at it like what's ahead, what's next. And so what Matt Hall's putting on the table is this could be next. And so I think what we're going to start to see is an openness maybe from Speaker Tate and the governor to how do we make this work? And I think maybe the Senate is going to be a little bit more skeptical from the school aid side, along with all the school groups saying you can't divert that money away without telling us how you're going to fill that hole. But I think that's a fair question all around for people. I think everyone wants to find a solution to the road funding issue, but not at the expense of schools. So that'll be the debate I think that we see happen. How does that tie into all the other things I just talked about, right? Does it take all those things off the table? Um, does it amplify the need to fix the Earned Sick Time Act and the tip wage? What about Governor Whitmer's economic development, levers that she wants to pull? All of this is going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. And then again, the dynamics of play of Speaker Tate ending his time as Speaker, Speaker-elect Hall coming into his seat in January. The Senate Majority Leader, when he breaks, retains her seat. She gets to sit right where she is. And so what role does she play? What will the governor do? How will she step in and, lead at this time where we really have a lot at stake in numerous ways when it comes to business education and our infrastructure?
Well, one thing's for certain, Kelly, it's going to be a very interesting next, I don't know, 3 to 4 weeks or so. Um, we do have a little bit of an update from Leo, the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. Do you want to share what we've learned and a new opportunity we have for our members next week?
Yes. So again, back to the Earned Sick Time Act. Thank you so much to all of you who have sent in questions on the Earned Sick Time Act and all these intricacies in all your various industries and how it's going to affect you. As promised, we have fed those into the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. They have updated their frequently asked questions that just happened over the weekend. We are in the process of diving in and dissecting them in order to find out what has changed, what has provided more clarity, and maybe what is still some unanswered questions that you have, and that we have. And so we will provide that, update our website once we get that taken care of. But we're going to offer a special briefing next week, Thursday at noon, with our president and CEO, Brian Calley. We would invite you to sign up RSVP for that and learn more next week as we head into this lame duck session. I'm hopeful that will also have a little bit more clarity on the direction that the legislature is willing to take with the Earned Sick Time Act next week. So please stay tuned for that too. We're just continue to try and offer you resources and ways to connect so you can be as prepared as possible as we head towards February 21st, 2025.
Absolutely. And we do have a couple of kind of fun activities coming up in December that we want to highlight for you as well. Two of our very popular owner-to-owner events are happening in December. On the 11th, we'll be at the Bavarian Inn in Frankenmuth from 4 to 6 p.m. And we'll be at Wolverine Pickleball in Ann Arbor on December 19th from 4 to 6 p.m. So if you're in the Great Lakes Bay or the Washtenaw region, or just might happen to be in those areas during that time frame, please come visit us and join us. You don't have to be a member to attend. You just have to be a small business owner, and the events are all free. So you can learn about those at sbam.org/events.
All right, I think that's all we have for today, Sarah. And obviously, we want to say thank you. We are so thankful for all of you at SBAM. We hope you have an awesome Thanksgiving. And again, we know a lot of this stuff that we talk about is heavy, but we truly are here for you. Please reach out. Please contact your legislator. We really hope that you are able to spend this holiday with your family and friends. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you back here next Monday at 3 o'clock. And don't forget to support your local small businesses. On Saturday, it is Small Business Saturday. So shop small this holiday season and share on social media where you're shopping so others can be inspired. We'll see you next week.